He owns and operates the Pack-A-Day podcast that airs 365 days a year with over 12 million views on YouTube. A new adventure begins. It's time for the Pack-A-Day radio show with Andy Herman on 1250 AM and 105.7 FM The Fan, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook and on the free Odyssey app.
Good morning, Packers Nation. Happy Wednesday. Welcome into the Pack-A-Day radio show. We are live from the 1250 AM and 105.7 FM The Fan studios and powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. We made it. It's day one. Packers training camp, actual, real, sort of kind of football. No pads today, but still, the Packers are going to be out at Ray Nitschke Field, actually practicing. We'll have actual stuff to talk about that happened on a football field in some capacity. I could not be more excited. I am overjoyed. I will be out there today at practice. The cadence for practice today is that Brian Gutekunst is going to be speaking at 9:20 a.m. this morning. In order to do so, thankfully, we have the wonderful Mitch Thunder Nellis filling in for me for segment 3 today so that I can get it over there and, ask Brian Gutekunst all the hard-hitting questions. Hopefully we find out, a little bit more about the Elton Jenkins situation at some point, kind of see what's going on with Quay Walker. We'll see if there's any other sort of injury updates or anything like that. But we'll talk to Brian Gutekunst at 9:20, and then Matt LaFleur will be at 9:50 today, and that will be the normal cadence for him moving forward with practice starting at 10:30 a.m. As mentioned, I'll be out there. It does look like Green Bay has about a 50-50 chance of rain and even maybe some thunderstorms right around 10 and 11 a.m. today. So we'll see if we can survive outside or if they have to move practice inside, which of course would be a huge bummer because then it would not be open to fans. But hopefully we can avoid that altogether. After practice, players will be available in the locker room. So it is going to be a full morning and a full day of Packers updates, news from Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst in actual practice, etc. And like I said, we made it. It's here. Packers football, July 23rd. And before you know it, family night, preseason, cut down day, and regular season will be here before you know it. Heck, we'll be talking draft before you know it. This whole thing just goes so insanely fast every single year, but it's always worth celebrating day one. And like I've said recently, it's like a rite of passage. And if you haven't had the chance to get to a Packers training camp, maybe don't risk it today because, like I said, we might get some rain in the forecast today. We'll see, but definitely get out there, and it's definitely going to be more than worth your time just to get out. Even if you're not, I mean, if you're listening to this, I'm assuming you're a Packers fan, but even if you're not a Packers fan, still awesome to get out there and see an NFL team practice. So we kick everything off today. We do have a pretty big injury update before we get started today. Super producer Tommy on the injured list today. So, I feel like Tommy now with him, doing the leadoff show every single day, that his health is now tied to the Brewers. And if the Brewers don't do well, if they lose, it's going to take its toll on Tommy. So Tommy is out today, but we have super producer Charlie in his place. Charlie, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing very good. How are you doing today, Andy?
I am fantastic. Are you as stoked for Packers training camp as I guess I don't, Charlie, I don't know your sports history. Are you primarily a baseball guy, a Bucks NBA guy? Are you a Packer? Like what's your primary and just in general, how excited are you for camp?
I'm a football guy, so I played football all the way through college.
Cool.
I actually grew up a Bears fan, but working here, I've been, slowly learning more and more about the Packers and more to love the Packers than just hate them. But I grew up a Bears fan, so this is something I'm still very excited about. I love football season every time it comes around.
Tommy, come back. Tommy, where are you?
Only one day.
No,
Only
that's awesome. It's always good, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can appreciate that. But no, it's like you said, it's a fun time football season, no matter what, regardless of the team that you are rooting for, cheering for, and certainly just excited. I was excited to see Bears updates on my timeline with them getting to practice and things like that. So we'll see what kind of goes down in Chicago and of course through the rest of the NFC North. But of course today we are celebrating the return of Packers practice in a pretty significant way. We've got a lot to discuss when it comes to training camp in day one. We did have some updates from yesterday. Packers did make a transaction. They did sign a new kicker Mark McNamee, who is a new International Pathway Program player, an international player that will take up their 91st roster spot eventually, that exception that exists. And if he stays on, will likely be the 17th practice squad player. A couple things. First of all, we know that they released Alex Hale the other day, which is why this spot is open. You might be thinking, Kicker. Why kicker? Well, first of all, they usually don't like their one kicker doing all the kicking all throughout camp. It's kind of like a quarterback with his arm. You're trying to monitor how many reps that they're taking with it. Same thing a kicker with his leg. You don't want that getting overused throughout the course of training camp. It's a long season. So you would like somebody else to do some of the kickoffs and the field goal attempts and things like that so that Brandon McManus does not get worn out in any way. Now they have Mark McNamee to be able to do that. The other thing is that I actually think the use of the international pathway program and that international exception, I think actually keeping a extra kicker on the practice squad is one of your best ways to utilize that, just because you don't like if you end up with like a kicker injury or health scare, which just happened before in the NFL, like the day before a game, and you can't find a kicker or don't have one on your roster, you're going into a game without a kicker. And in the NFL, that is catastrophic to just your chances winning that game. Kickoff, I mean, Daniel Whalen could do kickoffs. That wouldn't be the end of the world, but just extra points and, field goal attempts, anything over, 25 yards is going to become a massive challenge. You're just forced to go for it in so many situations. So the fact that they could potentially have a kicker on their practice squad where in case of emergency, you can break glass and call, in this case, Mark McNamee up and have that on your roster, it's not the worst case scenario in the world. So just gives them a little bit of insurance. And for now in camp, it takes a little bit of the, I wouldn't say pressure, but just the work off of Brandon McManus and his leg, which is, I think, a very positive thing. Meanwhile, we found out yesterday, Jordan Love came in number 68 in the top 100. I don't think we need to break it down in any great detail. Feels like a fair spot for Jordan. I think he was in the 30s in 2023. Obviously had the injury he dealt with this past year. My only thing that I'll say is that if he's healthy through the entirety of 2025, I would expect him to come in much higher than number 68 this upcoming season and when we're talking about this next year. All right, so as mentioned, day one of Packers training camp as you're listening to us live on the Pack-A-Day radio show, 1250 AM, 105.7 FM, of course, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Here's a lot of things that we're going to kind of be looking at today as we kick off camp. First of all, as mentioned, there are some potential transactions that are still available. You do have 2 potential roster spots that could still get filled. So we'll kind of keep an eye before the start of camp today or just during camp. If there's a couple extra players out there, it's possible that they sign some guys at the last minute. So they do have 2 roster spots available. It's going to be worth kind of keeping an eye on some of the new coaches that are out there. DeMarcus Covington, new defensive line coach. Sean Mannion, new quarterbacks coach. Sean Duggan, new linebackers coach, filling in for Anthony Campanelli. Of course, Mannion filling in for the epic and arguably Hall of Fame quarterbacks coach in Tom Clements. So those are going to be some new interesting coaches that are going to be out there. DeMarcus Covington, the one that people are probably going to be talking about the most because everyone's looking for the Packers to get their ROI from that defensive line that they have 4 first-round picks on in Devontae Wyatt, Kenny Clark, Rashawn Gary, and of course LVN. Need more pressure out of that group. We'll see if DeMarcus Covington can bring the best out of those defensive linemen. I would not expect any sort of revelations on the offensive line or defensive line for these first couple days of camp. Just remember, there's no pads. As mentioned, this first training camp practice a year ago lasted about an hour and 27 minutes. So if you're looking for how long today's practice is going to last, probably right around that hour and a half range. There'll be, I'm sure, some kind of 2-minute drills maybe or some red zone periods, but don't expect a ton of, super high intense. This is going to basically be like another OTA or mini camp on these first couple days until they get into the padded practice portion of training camp. So with that offensive line play, defensive line play, it's not going to mean a whole heck of a lot until we actually get those pads on. But that is right around the corner and will be coming in a few days here. So buckle up and we'll get there sooner rather than later. Of course, one thing that we are going to be looking at is lineups and attendance. And Matt LaFleur would tell you that the lineups don't mean a whole heck of a lot and who's with what group and who's starting. It still matters to us. We're still interested to see who's playing where, who's at left tackle, who's at right guard, some of these interesting competitions, who's with the ones, who's not with the ones. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. And then, of course, we know some of the PUP list players and the non-football injury list players, Quay Walker and Elton Jenkins kind of leading the way there. But we'll see if there's any other players that are unexpectedly not practicing or if any of those PUP or NFI players passed their physical today and are ready to go for day one of camp. So we'll be keeping an eye on the attendance, just who's participating, who's practicing, and who's with the rehab group. And then, of course, any lineup updates as well. As we talk again to Matt LaFleur and Goody, looking for updates on Quay Walker, Elton Jenkins, I think those are going to be the two big ones. I'm sure we'll get some interesting nuggets and news and notes from them as well, although they usually kind of try to keep things tight to the vest, but I'm sure the beat guys will have a ton of great questions for both, and we'll get those that audio for you, I'm sure, throughout the course of today, as well as tomorrow right here on the Pack-A-Day Radio Show. There's plenty of new players to watch out at training camp. You've got Matthew Golden, first-round pick, first wide receiver taken in the first round since Javon Walker. Anthony Belton, Savion Williams, their second and third round picks. Barron Sorrell, their fourth round pick. Unfortunately, Colin Oliver, their fifth round pick. John Williams and Micah Robinson, their seventh round picks, are both on those, or all three of them are on the injury list. So likely we'll not see them today, but still going to be keeping a very close eye on those first 4 rounds of draft picks, as well as Warren Brinson, who was a 6th rounder. Free agents that will be making their Packers training camp debut include Aaron Banks, Nate Hobbs, McCole Hardman, and Isaiah Simmons. So lots of new faces to kind of be keeping an eye on as we kick off this day one of training camp. And of course, there's a bunch of roster battles that are taking place as well. Some of these much more important than others, but I think all of them are worth just kind of keeping an extra eye on in some capacity. You've got the number 3 quarterback, Taylor Elgersma versus Sean Clifford. I think that should be a very interesting number 3 battle. It probably doesn't take place on the 53-man roster, but very well could take place for who gets that practice squad spot and who ultimately is their emergency call-up number 3 quarterback if they need it throughout the course of the season. Hopefully, knock on wood, they don't need it. Emmanuel Wilson versus Chris Brooks. This is one that might end up being much ado about nothing. Reason being, it could be very possible that both Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks make the roster like they did last year. They were, at a point last year with 4 running backs on the roster. They could do that again this year. So it's possible both make it. I think both are worthy of making it. But if you get into a scenario where Josh Jacobs is obviously your number 1, Marshawn Lloyd is your number 2, or at least your number 2 most likely to make the team, even if he isn't the true number 2. We'll see how that plays out. But if you end up with Emmanuel Wilson versus Chris Brooks, that's a very interesting running back battle. And both of them, to me, are worthy of making the 53. So that'll be a fun one to watch. One that I'm not exactly saying should make the first page of the paper, if you will, but Ben Sims versus John Fitzpatrick. That'll be an interesting number 3 tight end battle. Maybe Messiah Swinson gets his name in that conversation as well. The wide receiver room, this one is like all over the place. So first of all, you have the top of the wide receiver room. So who just gets the most playing time and the most targets? You've got Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks. Eventually Watson will come back, but not during camp. Romeo Dobbs. Matthew Golden. I would expect those 4 to be your kind of primaries, but can Savion Williams or one of these other wide receivers get their name in that conversation as well for one of those top 4 wide receiver spots? Even within that top 4, who gets the most targets? Who's out there the most? Is it Dobbs? Is it Wicks? Is it Reed? Is it Golden? I think that's going to be worth keeping an eye on. You likely have this 3-way battle for 1 roster spot. There could be 2, there could be none, but in all likelihood, it's going to be 1. And that battle is probably between Bo Melton, Malik Heath, and then McCole Hardman. Those are probably your 3 that are battling for 1 spot. That's an interesting battle. And you kind of have 3 very interesting, unique skill sets where Hardman's kind of punt returner gadget player with great speed. Malik Heath is your possession receiver. Bo Melton is your, playing on all special teams units, plus kind of gadgety speed wide receiver, plus maybe defensive back as well. We'll see if that continues today with Bo Melton. But that's a fun roster battle. Even the practice squad battle at wide receiver is potentially interesting. First of all, if like a Bo Melton or a Malik Heath don't make the team, they could certainly be in line for practice squad spots. I guess technically so could McCole Hardman. But then you've got guys like Julian Hicks, Cornelius Johnson, Sam Brown Jr., and Will Shepard who are doing everything in their power to get their names in the conversation and try to make it on one of those 16 practice squad spots. So the wide receiver room is absolutely worth keeping an eye on at every level of training camp. You've got that starting offensive line. We're pretty certain Aaron Banks is going to start at left guard. Elton Jenkins, assuming the contract situation gets resolved, is going to start at center, and Zach Tom's going to be your right tackle. But probably 2 of the 3 between Rasheed Walker, Jordan Morgan, and Sean Ryan are going to be starting at left tackle and right guard would be your guess. Who it is, that remains to be seen. I think it'll be Rasheed at left tackle. I think it'll be Sean Ryan at right guard. And then I think we might see Jordan Morgan rotate in with one of those players, probably at left tackle, but we'll have to wait and see. The other interesting aspects of that group is Anthony Belton going to make any sort of push for any sort of competition along the offensive line, or maybe him rotating with a player. And then, Jacob Monk, he's going to probably get some time at center with Elton Jenkins out to start. At the end of training camp last year, Jacob Monk was somebody that had the opportunity. It was working with the ones at right guard as well, kind of in that conversation. Didn't end up that way. By the end of the year, he was the one that was most inactive through the course of the season amongst the offensive linemen. But with some more opportunity for him, maybe he gets his name in that conversation. Then your offensive linemen 8 through 10 that are trying to just make the roster, guys like Kadeem Telfort and Travis Glover, Donovan Jennings. Eventually, when he comes back, from injury, John Williams as well. There's others. Tyler Cooper's an interesting UDFA. So the 8th, 9th, 10th offensive lineman spots very much up for grabs. Jacob Monk clearly involved in that conversation as well. I think at defensive end, and I still might be the only one kind of beating this drum, I still think there's a potential Brenton Cox versus Kingsley Enagbare battle. If they only want to keep 5 defensive ends, which is well within the realm of possibility, and you've got LVN and Rashawn Gary as your top 2, with your draft picks, Colin Oliver and Barron Sorrell likely not going anywhere, all of a sudden you've got a very interesting battle between Kingsley Enagbare and Brenton Cox. And as I've talked about, Brenton Cox is younger. He has more years of team control. He's about $2 million cheaper. And there's the opportunity that Kingsley Enagbare might have some trade value to actually bring something back in return. I'm not sure Brenton Cox does. I would also add on top of that, Brenton Cox actually outplayed Kingsley Enagbare at the end of last year. So that to me is a very interesting potential battle. Your linebackers 3 through 6, you've got 2 clear, obvious ones at the top in Quay Walker and Edgerrin Cooper. But after that, is it Isaiah McDuffie at number 3? I think so. But can Tyron Hopper or Isaiah Simmons get in that conversation? And then who makes it as your 4th, 5th, 6th? If you keep 6 guys in that battle, Jamon Johnson, the UDFA, Christian Welch, Isaiah Simmons, Tyron Hopper. I think those are going to be some really fun battles as well. And then at safety, Katana Ladapo, Zane Anderson, Omar Brown, kind of battling for that, 4th, 5th, 6th spots. And then you also, is Javon Bullard going to actually compete for that starting safety spot with Evan Williams? Or does that just become Evan Williams' spot? And then last but not least, that corner spot. We know the top 3, right? It's going to be Nate Hobbs. It's going to be Keyshawn Nixon. It's going to be Carrington Valentine with Javon Bullard mixed in there. But after that, the true corners, you've got a variety of different corners that are trying to fight for the 4th, 5th, or 6th spots in that corner room, including 7th round pick Micah Robinson, who again right now is hurt. But of course, you've got Kalen King, you've got Kamal Haddon, UDFAs like Tyron Herring, you've got Gregory Jr. Like there's an interesting mix of players that are going to be fighting it out for those corner spots as well. So the competitions all throughout camp are going to be more than worth keeping an eye on again as we kick off camp today. Of course, all eyes are going to be on Jordan Love as he makes this transition into his 3rd year as a starter. Expectations are incredibly high. The hope is that Jordan can remain healthy and consistent throughout the course of this year, and we get a full proof of concept of exactly what he is as the leader, starting quarterback, franchise guy of this team, and what this team kind of looks like with him at the helm moving forward. So all eyes will, of course, be on Jordan Love as well. And we're going to be monitoring Christian Watson. He's not going to be active anytime soon. It's still most likely that he will start the season on the physically unable to perform list, but he's already, again, doing some running around, and he's ahead of schedule per Matt LaFleur at the end of minicamp. So we'll kind of keep an eye on exactly what that looks like. And, just if he's doing any, work to the side and what that kind of looks like, we'll just be monitoring Christian Watson. There's a variety of different themes that are out there as well. Green Bay needs to get more pressure with their front 4. Again, we're not going to get much look at that today when it comes to no pads on, but if that front 4 looks much improved, or if they can be much better from a pass rush win rate standpoint through the course of the season, that's going to be a theme that we're keeping an eye on. Drops were a huge theme, and just wide receiver error were a huge theme this past year on the offensive side of the ball. We'll be keeping an eye on that. Of course, Brian Gutekunst set the tone right at the end of last season, or the beginning of the offseason, depending on how you want to look at it, by saying that there needs to be more urgency for this team, that it's time for this team to start winning championships. We're going to be keeping an eye on that. Can you feel, is there a tangible sense of urgency with this team in 2025? And then, of course, growth and development. This is a draft and develop team. They're still going to be one of, if not the youngest teams in the league. There are only 2 players on this entire roster over the age of 29, and they're both specialists, Matt Orzik and Brandon McManus. Those are the only players 30 years or older. Everyone else is young. This needs to be a team that continues to be green and growing. We saw too much regression this past year. It needs to be a lot of development and progression this upcoming season. Of course, we're going to be taking a look at injuries as well. And then the other thing that I always recommend, and especially if you get out to training camp, there are special players that are out there, whether it is, been in recent years, guys like Aaron Rodgers, David Bakhtiari, Jair Alexander, Devontae Adams was such a great example of this. You will see these special players that come through and, of course, are playing for Green Bay. Take the opportunity to just appreciate some of their practice habits and what they do day in and day out. I know for me personally, I'm going to be keeping an extra eye on Xavier McKinney and what he can potentially, just watching him, enjoying him, and watching his greatness in real time. It's really awesome to see kind of their practice habits, how they go about it. And Xavier McKinney definitely on that list of star players that I know I always want to spend a little bit of extra time on as we kind of look at training camp and these practices and how these players reach the level of greatness that Xavier McKinney is potentially at. It is day one of training camp. We are going to have you covered, of course, every single day right here on the Pack-A-Day Radio Show. Of course, Mason Crosby, Mitch Nellis going to be covering you next on the Mason Crosby Show as well. Sparky's got you later on Wisconsin Sports Daily. It's going to be a ton of Packers from here on forward, but of course, right here on the Pack-A-Day Radio Show, we're talking Green Bay Packers Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. We always appreciate you guys joining us. Again, my name is Andy Herman. We've got a lot more to get to today. Mike Spofford from Packers.com is going to be joining us momentarily as soon as we get back from break. If you missed anything, some great conversations earlier this week. We had Paul Brettel on yesterday. You can check that out over on ESPN Milwaukee or on the free Odyssey app. So make sure you're checking out those. We are going to be right back with Mike Spofford, so do not go anywhere, and we'll be right back right after this. Welcome back to the Pack a Day Radio Show, live from the 1250 AM and 105.7 FM The Fan Studios, and powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. We are currently 76 and cloudy in Milwaukee, high of 90 today, low of 76, which is right now. Thunderstorms likely in about 20 minutes, so keep an eye out for that. Also, a reminder that the Mason Crosby Show with Mitch Thunder Nellis is coming up from 9 to 11 today. Also, as mentioned, Mitch is going to be taking over for me in segment 3 today, so you get extra Mitch time, which is what more could you possibly want than that on any given Wednesday. Also, the highly anticipated Border Brouhaha Softball Slam, a spirited charity softball game set to take place this Sunday at the picturesque ABC Supply Stadium in Beloit, with proceeds benefiting Make-A-Wish Wisconsin. All-time leading Packers scorer Mason Crosby will be joined by former Packers Hall of Fame wide receiver Jordy Nelson and other football stars and influencers, promising a thrilling afternoon of camaraderie and sportsmanship. Get your tickets at skycarp.com. And last but not least, Pack a Day podcast and Pack a Day radio show over on YouTube. Make sure you're checking that out, as well as all where you get your favorite podcasts. The show is, again, out there where you can get all of your favorite segments, the interviews, the way that you want to listen to it at any point in time. Make sure to subscribe, follow, like, give those 5-star reviews. But the Pack a Day radio show is now out there wherever you get your favorite podcasts and on YouTube as well. Joining us now on the Fan Guest Hotline, powered by Gruber Law, is the one and only Mike Spofford, who is live from 1265. Mike, you, of course, can follow at Mike Spofford and over at Packers.com. It is great to be chatting with you. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Andy. How about yourself?
I am fantastic. Day one of Packers training camp. You're down in the thick of things right now. We're going to be talking to Goody in just a little under an hour. Of course, Matt in about an hour and 20 minutes, and then practice in just over 2 hours from now. What's the vibe over there for day one of training camp?
Hey, I think everybody's just ready to get this thing rolling, right? I mean, I know there's always this big build up to the first day of training camp, but then practice is really still just sort of like OTAs because they're not in pads yet and whatnot. But when you have the crowd out there at Nitschke Field, when you have all the fans, along the chain link fences and the bike rides and everything else, all the kids getting involved in the activities, it definitely creates an atmosphere unlike any other. This is the 1 month of the year from now until the end of training camp that this place feels like this, and it's a lot of fun.
It's alive. There's a vibe. There's an energy. It's a rite of passage in summer. It's an epic feeling. I can't wait to get out there and obviously see you guys all here in just a little bit. We have, of course, recently had a big transaction right before the start of training camp, similar to last year where Kenny Clark signed his extension. This year we get Zach Tom signing his extension right before the start of camp. A key piece for Green Bay, a great contract for the Packers. Your thoughts on Zach Tom signing right before the start of camp here?
Well, I'm sure both sides, both the team and the player, are really happy to get this thing done before training camp starts. I don't think anybody's surprised, of course, that the Packers are extending Zach Tom and they want him in the fold long term. Goody was pretty open and honest about that throughout the offseason, that this was a priority for the organization. And to Zach Tom's credit, he didn't talk about it in the media. He didn't try to do any kind of a holdout during the voluntary off-season workouts or mini camp or anything like that. He just went about his business, figured it would take care of itself, and it did. And I think the Packers they came out in a pretty good spot here. When you look at the fact that Zach Tom, he finished third in the Associated Press All-Pro voting at right tackle last year. Two of the highest paid right tackles in the game right now, Tristan Wirfs and Penei Sewell, they both got $80 million of guaranteed money on their new deals. Now they're longer deals, but they got $80 million of guaranteed money. And the Packers essentially were able to get Zach Tom signed to this long-term extension for about $30 million in guaranteed money. So it's a good deal for Zach Tom. It's a lot of money in his pocket right away with that big signing bonus, but it's also a good deal for the Packers in terms of the overall structure.
I think from a structure standpoint, from a monetary standpoint, I think the Packers have to be thrilled with the overall structure of this contract. And like you said, it's not like Zach Tom's calling home and being like, Yeah, sorry guys, I only got 88 million. I think that phone call to his family was probably pretty excited for what he got on his side as well. So hopefully this is a win-win for both sides. But looking at it from a Packers standpoint, I think getting this deal done, 4-year extension, it's going to take him through really the prime of his career through age 30. He'll be a free agent at age 31 if this contract goes through fruition to the end of it. So again, I think Green Bay and Brian Gutekunst, Russ Ball have to be absolutely thrilled with how this contract came out. Not the only transaction. Again, as we're being joined by Mike Spofford, you can follow him over at Mike Spofford on social media. And of course, the wonderful work that he, Wes, and the team do over at Packers.com. That was not the only transaction. They made a couple other moves: new wide receiver, new kicker. Alex Hale is gone. They released a couple defensive tackles, and of course, we saw Quay Walker, amongst others, be put on the physically unable to perform list. Elton Jenkins on the non-football injury list. Anything stand out to you in general about these transactions, or anything that you kind of will keep an extra eye on at the start of camp here?
I don't know if there's anything too awfully surprising. I mean, it was certainly unexpected that apparently this injury happened with Alex Hale, and so they needed to move on there and bring in another kicker because they don't want their veteran and Brandon McManus to have to take all of the kicking reps throughout training camp. He's a veteran who's going to obviously get his work in, but he doesn't need to work that leg maybe like he did when he was 24, 25 years old. So that was sort of a move made out of necessity that wasn't necessarily expected. But when you bring in another wide receiver into this mix, the signing from Colorado, another guy to keep an eye on, right? I mean, the Packers have a pretty good track record at bringing in wide receivers who can make some things happen out there on the practice field. And obviously there are only so many roster spots. There are only so many spots on the practice squad. But anybody that's out there, especially with these quarterbacks, Jordan Love, Malik Willis, those guys can certainly help make anybody make a bid for the roster. So definitely worth keeping an eye on.
I was just talking about that wide receiver spot, and even the practice squads spots are going to be interesting. There's going to be probably two of maybe McCole Hardman, Bo Melton, and Malik Heath, who may not end up making the team, who will be in the conversation for the practice squad. Then you've even got some really fun guys like Sam Brown Jr., Cornelius Johnson, Julian Hicks, and now Will Shepard as well. That even just, again, trying to fight for a wide receiver practice squad is going to be very difficult. So when Goody and Matt talk about competition and depth, well, you've got to fight tooth and nail just to try to make it out of the Packers practice squad here at wide receiver. As you get ready for camp, Mike, we all have kind of different players, maybe, different, roster battles, different storylines that we're kind of keeping an eye on as camp kicks off. As you kind of go in and, are going to be keeping an extra eye on things, what are maybe a couple storylines, roster battles, or just players in general that you might be keeping an extra eye on?
I think for me, the biggest thing as far as a position group that I'll be watching, and I know a lot of people are going to want to talk about wide receivers, and they'll certainly get their due with as heated as that competition is going to be. But I'm going to be watching things really closely on the offensive line because, for one, there's been the contract issue with Elton Jenkins, and we're going to hear from Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur before practice. I'm sure they're going to be asked about what the status is with Jenkins. He was not participating during the offseason program, so the move to center feels like it hasn't really officially started yet, and we'll see where things are with that. So that's a big one. But then also with Jordan Morgan, your first-round draft pick from last year, we've been told he's going to be competing with Rasheed Walker at left tackle. He's going to be competing with Sean Ryan at right guard. Can Jordan Morgan win a starting spot on this offensive line as a first-round draft pick who had his rookie season cut short due to a recurring shoulder injury that eventually needed surgery? That was unfortunate in that respect, but obviously he was drafted in the first round for a reason. Now, I think Walker at left tackle and Ryan at right guard, both of those guys are going to be pretty difficult to beat out. I mean, those guys have piled up a lot of experience now over the last couple of years. They've certainly shown what they're worth with this Packers offense and with the offensive line unit. So it's not going to be easy for Jordan Morgan to crack this starting lineup, but I do think that's a story to watch. And quite frankly, if he isn't able to win one of those starting jobs, going into the season with a first-round draft pick being your number 6 guy, being your first guy off the bench potentially on the offensive line when you need somebody, that's not exactly a bad spot to be in either.
It's not. I've seen people say like, "Oh, what a disappointment" or stuff like. If the other five guys are just better, and he still is a really good lineman, but you have him as your number six, well, we know, Mike, you're going to need that sixth offensive lineman probably sooner rather than later. Like injuries are going to happen along the offensive line. You got five guys that've got unbelievable versatility along that line. And he's going to have a huge value to Green Bay one way or the other. We've also seen Green Bay not afraid to do rotations on the offensive line. A lot of teams are not willing to do that. Green Bay, they could easily, have Jordan Morgan and Rasheed Walker do the left tackle swap like we've seen in the past with Yosh Nijman and Rasheed Walker. We could see it at right guard with Jordan Morgan and Sean Ryan, like we saw with Sean Ryan and John Runyon Jr. in the past as well. So those are also possibilities, but he's going to play at some point this year. I think he's going to have a really sound season. I'm also interested, and I'd be curious your thoughts on this as well. If the Elton, injury situation does kind of continue, we saw a lot of Jacob Monk at, center in OTAs and mini camps. I'll be curious if that continues and if Monk continues to get that, or if they do kick Sean Ryan over, get him some of those reps and the idea of best five guys out there, and then just put Jordan Morgan at right guard and see if until Elton comes back, like maybe they just kind of work it that way. So there's a lot of moving pieces there, but I'm very interested. I'm right there with you to see how that kind of plays out.
Yeah, and I think with regard to the center spot, if there is a period here, before Elton Jenkins is back, we may see both things happen. We may see Sean Ryan taking reps. We may see Jacob Monk taking reps, and they're going to work both guys. They're going to work multiple combinations and whatnot on the offensive line until it really comes down to decision time, and then you have to kind of pick what you're doing to move forward for the start of the regular season. So there's going to be a lot of news these first few days of training camp. But I think everybody has to keep in mind it's just the first few days of training camp. There's going to be family night. There's going to be some joint practices and the preseason games. There's a lot to sort out here over the next month or so, not just with regard to the 53, but then what is the lineup going to look like heading into week one. And this week is just the beginning.
I disagree. I will be making all my sweeping overreactions just based off of today's practice, and everything will be determined at the end of this 90 minutes or so today. But no, you're absolutely right. There's a long way to go. This is just the beginning, but it's still fun to obviously see all these guys back in the field. Of course, the big question everyone wants to know, Mike Spofford, three things. Is it going to be back at the end of each practice? You, Larry, Wes, get one big takeaway at the end. I love listening to you guys every single day. Are we going to get three things at the end of practice today?
Yeah, it is on the rundown. We will be doing it right at the edge of the practice field as soon as practice is over, like we've done for I don't know how many years that segment has been going on now. But yeah, we have a lot of fun with it. It has definitely become a staple of training camp for us, and we will keep rolling.
What's the normal process for you of like when your three thing hits, like when your thing hits of like, has there been a moment where like the camera's about to go on and you're like, all right, need a thing, or usually did like middle of the practice, or are you like, all right, I got my thing and maybe a backup thing in case Wes or Rock takes the other one?
Yeah, this is how it usually goes. So practice ends, we're walking over towards where the camera is set up. I will cross paths with Wes and I will say, okay, like, what do you want? Okay, you got that. I got this. We get in front of the camera, and then they're doing like the mic checks, and Larry's like, okay, what are you guys talking about? And I'll tell him what I got. Wes will tell him what he's got. And then we have no idea what Larry's going to talk about, but then with, Larry goes last, and we all sort of turn our heads and be entertained by the Rock with whatever it is that he has observed during the past, 90 to 120 minutes. So that's literally the extent of, I guess, what you'd call the pre-production meeting when it comes to three things.
Love it. I absolutely love it. All right, a couple more before we get you out of here. I know I'm sure you want to get over and get prepped for Goody and Matt here momentarily, but couple of quick things. One of the things I've been trying to ask people who have obviously been kind of in your position or covering this team for a while, there's always these training camp memories that you have of covering the team. You've been doing this now. How many years have you been doing this now, Mike? It's been a hot second.
Yeah, with Packers.com. This is actually my 20th training camp with the website. So yeah, thanks. Appreciate that.
That's awesome. So 20 years, it spans quite a distance. What are maybe a couple things that have stood out to you that you've taken away? It could be a moment, could be a play, could be a player. I'll let you go in any direction you want.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, obviously, and after all these years, a lot of training camps run together. But this is kind of crazy to talk about because he's probably a player that a lot of Packer fans don't even really remember. But I will never forget the year that I believe it was either right before or right after family night. So you're talking a week and a half to 2 weeks into training camp. A guy named Chris Banjo showed up as a late training camp signing, and he was thrown in there at safety. He's thrown in there on special teams. Nobody really thought much of it at the time. And lo and behold, the guy ended up making the team, despite the fact that he wasn't here all spring and he missed the first couple weeks of training camp. He makes the team and becomes, in effect, a special teams captain during the course of his time with the Packers. And then he went on to play a number of other years with other squads as well. That's just one of those things that a guy like Banjo, who I enjoyed him. He was always a great guy to talk to. I got a one-on-one interview with him one year for a Packers yearbook story. Really enjoyed the time that Chris was here. But I've always kept that in mind as one of those examples where if somebody gets signed after the start of training camp and walks out there on the practice field, don't just write him off. I mean, yeah, the odds are long. It's the chances aren't great that guy is going to make the team or even make the practice squad, but don't completely write him off because every once in a while there'll be a Chris Banjo that walks out there on the practice field and then is suddenly going to be playing games in week one for the Green Bay Packers.
There's that linebacker a few years ago as well that made it also as a special teams guy. But the Banjo story is so cool. He played a decade in the league, is now the Jets special teams coordinator, just signed on to be their special teams coordinator this year. So, yeah, he made a name for himself just kind of out of nowhere, and it was a really cool story. So that's a great one, and I love just kind of bringing players like that up because they're kind of the unsung heroes and kind of like some of the cooler stories of training camp. All right, last but not least, Mike Spofford, Packers.com. Before we get you out of here, you don't get many opportunities to talk Milwaukee Brewers baseball, but I know you are a huge Brewers fan. So they have obviously been unbelievable as of late. Tough 1-0 loss this past night, but how are you feeling about your Brew Crew?
Well, hey, how can you not feel good about where things are going? I mean, this has been quite the run. They've not only closed the gap on the Cubs, but obviously have caught up to the Cubs at this point. And it's last night was, you can't get upset when an 11-game winning streak ends, right? You know the streak is going to end at some point. Certainly frustrating to see one poorly placed high fastball by Nick Mears ends up costing you the winning streak there. But that being said, it's fun to watch these guys. It's a bunch of young guys that really believe in who they are and what they're doing and the way they play the game. And they play the game differently than the Cubs. They play the game differently than the Mets and the Dodgers. And they've shown that they can be competitive with all of those teams. And so it's fun. There's still a long way to go. Who knows what's going to happen here? But they're a fun bunch, and hopefully training camp doesn't keep me away too much from following the Brew Crew.
I'm sure you'll find some time in between, that's for sure. And they're certainly a team worth keeping an extra eye on. And I know for me, like even last night, I was trying to have the game on and get some work done. And they're just such a fun team to watch that whether they're pitching or batting or on base or anything, it's just you don't want to take your eye off the game and do anything else. It's just like they're such an exciting team to watch. So I'm right there with you. I'm sure we'll both be trying to catch as much Brewers as we possibly can in between tweets and articles and podcasts and everything else about the Green Bay Packers. Mike, you do an unbelievable job. I cannot wait to read all of your work all throughout the course of training camp. Tell us all about where we can follow you and anything you want to plug on the way out.
Yeah, well, we've got all the coverage of training camp on Packers.com. We're going to have 5 Things articles every day. We're going to have the 3 Things videos that you talked about. Wes and I are doing Packers Unscripted. We just brought that show back yesterday, and we'll have 2 episodes a week of that. So whether it's written, whether it's video, whether it's podcast, we've got you covered on Packers.com. So be sure to come and check us out. And I'm at Mike Spofford on Twitter. I don't tweet as much as you do at practice, Andy, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if anybody does. So, but no, we have a lot of fun out there, and we'll be keeping an eye on things as best we can.
The carpal tunnel will catch up with me eventually from the Twitter fingers going a little bit too wild. I'm excited to see you out there, Mike. I appreciate you taking the time this morning, and I'll see you at Goody's Presser in just over half an hour.
Yeah, sounds good. See you soon, Andy. Thanks for having me.
You bet. As always, that is Mike Spofford. Follow him on social media at Mike Spofford. Huge thank you to him for joining us on the Fan Guest Hotline, powered by Gruber Law. One call, that's all. Again, Mike Spofford, Packers.com. This has been at least my segments of the Pack-A-Day radio show. Mitch Nellis is going to be coming up next.
Whoa, whoa.
Look who it is.
Who made this terrible decision to give me extra airtime? This is the worst decision in the history of your long, illustrious podcasting career, Mr. Herman.
For the record, I requested Tommy, and Tommy got sick. So
Fair.
this was not my decision.
Good point.
I had things covered.
You did.
All right, how can I avoid Mitch taking over early? I'm like, I'll just have Tommy do it. So no, this was not my decision. I think you poisoned Tommy to get extra airtime is what I think happened.
I mean,
here.
that's not a bad call. I do have Packers.com up on my computer right now, looking at the media availability page. So I'm hoping to run some of Goody live during the Mason Crosby show with me. And if you happen to jump up and down on camera or ask some really loud questions, we will make sure to amplify those as much as possible.
What would you like me to ask Goody or Matt today, Mitch? If you got to ask one question to either one, what would you ask?
That's such a hard question because I'm so Brewers focused right now. That
do you want me to ask him about the Brewers?
Yeah, I want to know if Matt LaFleur knew that the Brewers had an 11-game winning streak before last night. I just want to know, like, does anyone in Green Bay know that the Brewers had that winning streak, or is that like a Milwaukee only thing?
I certainly knew. I don't know. I think there's a good contingency of Brewers fans in Green Bay for sure. Right. So I think they're well aware. Now we didn't have George Webb Burgers on the line with a win streak. There's no George Webbs here in Green Bay. So yeah, we don't have that going for us. But I guess it didn't happen anyway. To be fair, but yeah, we didn't have that going for us.
All right, well, get your butt out of here. Go over to Lambeau. Go to training camp. Have all the fun. We've got thunder and lightning and rain here right now, but it's supposed to pass. Hopefully, if you do as well, it'll pass. And day one of training camp is here, baby.
Cannot wait. That is Mitch Nellis. He's going to be right back after this, following up with the rest of the Pack-A-Day radio show. I'll be back tomorrow, so I'll see you guys soon. But we can hit commercial. See you guys tomorrow.
Yes, sir. This is not a test. This is rock and roll. Oh, it was Robin Williams' birthday, I think, yesterday. He would have been 74. My name's Mitch Nellis, a.k.a. Thunder, filling in for Andy Herman here on Pack-A-Day, the Pack-A-Day radio show. I'm in the Fan Studios powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. And welcome to... Opening day isn't the right word, but pitchers and catchers report, first day of spring training. I was thinking about it on my ride in, and thanks so much. Andy's jumping over to Lambeau because Goody's talking at 9:20. Tommy's out sick. Charlie's here today. Charlie, say hi to everybody.
Hey, how's it going?
It's great. You know, it's better when I walk in. I mean, I love Tommy, and I love my Tommy hug. But seeing your smiling face here in the morning is like just like an added bonus, an added shot of adrenaline.
Thanks,
if
I
you
appreciate
will.
it. I feel like I have like zero adrenaline. Like I came in here, it was 30 minutes before the show.
You're not supposed to have the adrenaline. You're supposed to be asleep. It's adrenaline for the rest of us, just like because your smile is so infectious.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
So today is the first day of training camp for our Green Bay Packers, as we all know. And I was trying to think on the drive in, like, all right, so pitchers and catchers report is a big deal. Like, we mark that date in February, and it's a week before everybody has to report to spring training and the first day of spring training. And it is a celebration, right? It is a celebration when baseball season starts. And the NBA has nothing like this. There is no celebration of the first day of training camp in the NBA. When training camp starts, the teams get together. They then play some like really terrible exhibition basketball games. But there's no juice. There's no excitement in the same way when you talk about training camp opening in the NBA. And in the NFL, and I don't know if people think about this, and if you have an opinion, feel free to chime in on the Nicolay Law Fan Talking text line 414-677-1250, 414-677-1250. You can give me a call or you can just text in. Like, I feel like, and granted, I'm old. You can, if you're watching on YouTube, right? We're on YouTube. You can see the color of my hair. You know I'm old. I feel like when I was a kid, training camp for football wasn't a thing either. Like, it wasn't something we looked forward to. It wasn't something we counted down the days to. Maybe we counted, back then, exhibition football, the starters played. They at least played a quarter or a half or even more. And so it was that was a big deal to see some of the exhibition games. But training camp wasn't a big deal. Training camp is now a big deal. And whether it's everybody knows it's that Wednesday of that week. So everybody comes in on Tuesday and weighs in and figures out what they need to do. And then on Wednesday, they put the pads on or they run through whatever they need to run through or they do all the things. We know now. ESPN lets us know. Even if they show video, which they thought was this year's Dallas Cowboys training camp, but actually was last year's Dallas Cowboys training camp with a player who they thought is on the Cowboys now, who's not even on the Cowboys last year. They said there was a highlight of George Pickens, and then like they had to come out and apologize that they showed the wrong highlight because George Pickens was not practicing yet because they had not had a practice yet because the talking heads at ESPN are idiots. But life happens, so it goes. They apologized. We all move on. That today is a special day, I think, is a new thing. 414-677-1250. If you have any thoughts on that or any, and I still think, with all due respect to football, and I'm not trying to rain on football's parade, and I know we're all about football today, I still think pitchers catchers report has a little more juice. At least in like the lexicon in the public of how we talk about what's exciting, what's happening, dates circled on calendars. Maybe not dates circled on calendars, actually. Maybe training camp is a bigger date circled on calendar because it means football is back. But saying the first day of training camp or saying pitchers and catchers report, I think pitchers and catchers report has a little more juice. Maybe that's one of my Twitter polls for today. I'm not sure if I'll throw that out there or not. But I still think pitchers and catchers report has a little more juice. But training camp is here, and there is no doubt that training camp now has juice. Yesterday, weigh in, go through all your tests, fill out your, I don't know, do they have to fill out their health insurance forms every year, like for all their stuff? I don't know, or their emergency contact, or I don't know, Charlie, when you started here, what forms did you have to fill out?
You know, all the tax forms. I feel like they probably got to fill those out too.
Now, do you think they fill those out? I feel like they got a guy for that.
They probably have a guy for that.
I feel like for emergency contact, maybe they write down their spouse's name and phone number, or if they don't have a spouse yet, their parent or whatever that might be. I hope that their agents take care of the tax forms and all, but you never know. Like, and do you really want those guys?
Maybe some of these guys like doing it themselves. Yeah,
oh,
some
for
of the
sure.
more veteran players.
Yes, there's definitely some of that as well, as there should be. But so that was yesterday, and today the Packers get on the field, and what do they get on, like 10:30 or so?
Yep.
And so we've got Goody at 9:20. We've got LaFleur at like 9:50, I think. I have the Packers website up, and it says media availability, so I assume Goody will be aired live. So we're probably going to air some of that live here on the Mason Crosby Show. When LaFleur talks, we do have Bob Nightingale joining the show at 10 o'clock to talk some baseball with us. So we probably won't have LaFleur on live, but we know that our good friend Andy Herman will be tweeting live literally every answer. As you just heard him with Mike Spofford from Packers.com. Andy is well known as being the tweet demon of of training camp. He basically tweets play by play of everything going on. So he does that during the press conferences as well. So that will be it. He's a fantastic follow on Twitter. And I assume if you're listening to this show, you know that it's at Andy Herman NFL, at Andy Herman NFL. I'm at Thunder MKE. All of us together here are at The Fan Milwaukee, and we'll be tweeting throughout the day as well. Anything that Andy tweets that's newsworthy, injuries, player updates, who the 5 on the starting O-line are, and how that all comes to be, who the starting wide receivers are, because there's 47 of them all. It's like they didn't have enough wide receivers. They got to go sign a guy from Colorado who actually is pretty good.
Could be on the team, yeah.
Right. Could make an NFL roster. Probably not going to make the Packers roster, but could make an NFL roster. So that was very interesting. For those of you on the YouTube channel, thank you so much. We are going to be switching over. We're going to be ending this feed, the Pack-A-Day Radio Show, and switching over to the Mason Crosby Show. So if this one ends and you want to keep rolling with me, and Sparky's coming in as well because Tommy is out sick, if you want a little Thunder and Sparky, feel free to jump in on that when we end this feed and then restart the feed. We got to figure out a way to make that make that more seamless. I feel like, because when we have all these watchers right now, and then we go back down to 0, and we need everybody to come back. Everybody come back. All right. Again, 414-677-1250 is the Nicolay Law Fan Talk and Text line. If you want to chime in, what's a bigger day for you? The opening day of training camp, or pitchers and catchers report? On the Mason Crosby Show today, of course, we're going to start with our Milwaukee Brewers. We're going to recap the game last night. We're going to talk about Miz's performance. We're going to talk about 3 2/3. We're going to talk about the silent bats. We're going to talk about the umpiring in the 9th inning and some super questionable calls that didn't allow the Brewers to get more base runners. And, of course, the big dumper, Cal Raleigh, with the game-deciding hit. And what does a 1-0 loss mean for our Milwaukee Brewers as the trade deadline is 8 days away? Again, we will listen to Goody. We will react to Goody. Bob Nightingale's on the show today. And we're just going to, we've got all the things going on today on the Mason Crosby Show presented by Verizon. But we've got to wrap things up here. It is the Potawatomi Sportsbook. The Potawatomi Sportsbook is where our studios are powered by, so we appreciate everything that they do. I don't have a final. Do we do the final moment here? What is it? What does he call it?
The final thought. I think
the final thought.
Final thought.
Do we have that? Should we? Do we have to hit that?
I
All
think
right.
there might be a button over there on that side.
You know what? I'm looking at Pack a Day Radio, and I don't see it. Oh, final thought. Never mind. There it is. All right, and everything's potted up, and let's hit it.
You got to do some smart thinking.
It's time for Andy Herman's final thought of the day.
What are you thinking?
Powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook.
What the hell were you thinking?
You're listening to the Pack a Day Radio Show on 1250 AM and 105.7 FM The Fan.
And I think the final thought for today, obviously, is training camp is here. We are here. Football is here. The Packers are here, and we can't get enough of it. So whether it's Andy Herman tweeting, whether it's all the other beat reporters tweeting, whether it's what we hear from Goody and LaFleur today, or assistant coaches or players after practice, we can't get enough sound. We can't get enough tweets. We can't get enough Packers. The Packers season is here. Football season is here. We've got news out of Washington. We've got news out of New Orleans. Of course, we're watching everything happening in Dallas and Cincinnati. It is football season. And so as we roll along here on the Pack a Day Radio Show, we will keep you up to date on everything Green Bay Packers related. Andy Herman with a great job today. Mike Spofford was fantastic, as always, from Packers.com. Stay tuned. It's the Mason Crosby Show with Mitch Thunder Nellis and Steve Sparky Pfeiffer. Coming up next, can't wait. This is going to be an absolute blast. What a day. Again, if you're on YouTube, we're going to end this feed, but we start the new feed, so just jump right back on with us as we get going. Jacob Mizorowski, Milwaukee Brewers, you know where we're going next on the Mason Crosby Show.